Train your English listening at B2 level.
Hello, Simon.
Hi, Maria.
Okay, what topic do you think we should choose for the project we're starting next week? I think we need to make sure that it's going to last over the next few months so that we can complete the project.
Well, there are several possibilities. Have you heard of the Pluto expedition? The spacecraft is about to arrive there, and it's going to send back pictures that we've never seen before. It should be really interesting.
That sounds like a good idea. What do you think, Dr. Thornton?
Well, I'm not so sure about that one. I mean, it's already been going for 10 years, and I think we should look at something which is planned for the future but hasn't started yet. It would give you a better chance to study it in depth and do far more analysis for your monthly update reports.
I don't think that's a problem. There'll be a lot of coverage on the news over the next few weeks.
That's true. But we really need something to last for a few months. On second thoughts, maybe Dr. Thornton's right. Perhaps we should look at something which hasn't started yet. Isn't there something I heard about a new Mars expedition? I think there's a group of people out in America somewhere who are preparing for a trip to Mars.
Yes, it was in the news last week. They've built a sort of camp in the desert in Arizona. There are 10 people living there for 6 months, just like they would be together on the trip to Mars and after they arrive there.
That'd be ideal. 6 months is just right for you. You could follow their progress and how the project develops. From what I know, the Pluto project is already a success, but with the Mars one, you can assess how successful it is as it progresses, and you can write it up for your final report.
Yeah, that sounds promising.
Okay, but before we decide, I'd just like to mention one more. I heard that the Chinese are planning an expedition to the moon.
What? Another man or woman on the moon? That's already been done. I don't think the moon's particularly interesting these days.
Simon has a point. I mean, the Chinese are coming up now, and they've got some new ideas. I don't think they're sending any astronauts. I think it's just an expedition with robots and machines to find the best place to start a colony.
Yes, but I don't think that's particularly interesting. I mean, no one has ever seen Pluto close up, and no one has tried to go to Mars, so I think they'd be more interesting expeditions to do.
You have a point. Perhaps it would be better to focus on one of the other two.
Okay. If you ask me, I'd prefer to see how a group of people get along living together in a difficult situation, like they'll be doing in Arizona in preparation for their trip. I think you'd get far more out of that, but the final decision is yours. What do you think?
I agree. I'd prefer to go for that one.
So that's agreed then. Good. Let's make a start.
Excellent. I'll make a note of that. We'll meet again next Wednesday, and you can give me your project outline. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
It looks like the government is going to raise taxes in the budget tomorrow.
Seriously? I really don't see how that could be a good idea. It'll reduce spending and affect the economy without a doubt.
They just said on the local news that the bus companies are planning to reduce fares for travel after 10 o'clock to get more people to come into town.
That certainly sounds like it would work well. It would definitely help shops and businesses, as well as the local attractions.
Oh no, not again. The air traffic controllers are going on strike. That will cause massive delays at the airports and ruin a lot of travel plans.
Well, to be honest, I'm not really worried. I'm travelling by train for my holiday.
It says here in today's paper that the government is going to offer free dental checks to people over 60.
I'm all for that. Anything that helps people take care of their teeth has to be a good thing.
There's a report in the sports section that says Athletic are going to buy that Brazilian striker Reginaldo for £40 million.
That much? I can't seriously believe that. I really don't think he's as good as the experts say he is.
The government is going to bring more doctors and medical staff from abroad to fill vacancies. Maybe they should try to find more here.
It's all the same to me. As long as they're qualified and speak good English, it shouldn't matter where they're from.
That'd be ideal. 6 months is just right for you. You could follow their progress and how the project develops. From what I know, the Pluto project is already a success, but with the Mars one, you can assess how successful it is as it progresses, and you can write it up for your final report.
Yeah. That sounds promising.
OK, but before we decide, I'd just like to mention one more. I heard that the Chinese are planning an expedition to the moon.
What? Another man or woman on the moon? That's already been done. I don't think the moon's particularly interesting these days.
Simon has a point. I mean, the Chinese are coming up now, and they've got some new ideas. I don't think they're sending any astronauts. I think it's just an expedition with robots and machines to find the best place to start a colony.
Yes, but I don't think that's particularly interesting. I mean, no one has ever seen Pluto close up, and no one has tried to go to Mars, so I think they'd be more interesting expeditions to do.
You have a point. Perhaps it would be better to focus on one of the other two.
Okay. If you ask me, I'd prefer to see how a group of people get along living together in a difficult situation, like they'll be doing in Arizona in preparation for their trip. I think you'd get far more out of that, but the final decision is yours. What do you think? I assume you've seen the latest update from the Mars project. One of the people has had to leave the project in Arizona, which is a bit of bad news. It only came out last night.
Oh, really? We missed that. Who is it?
Alfonso, the biologist. That means that they won't be able to monitor the plants they've been growing for food. Apparently, his mother was taken ill, so he decided it was more important to be with her than stay with the project.
His mother's ill. That's a pity. I hope it's nothing serious. Are they planning to bring someone else in, or have they got someone to take over the plant care?
Well, as you know, according to the rules of the project, no one else can come in once it's started, so they'll just have to make the best of it. After all, in a real situation, you can't just call up an agency and get someone else.
I think Carla would be the best person to take over. As Chief Medical Officer, she's had training in biology.
That might be true, but I'm not sure that means she's the best person for the job.
Why not? There's nobody else in the project who's got her experience in that area.
Maybe, but I personally think the best solution would be to share the work. I'm sure they can all learn how to do it, and what's more, they can make sure that if anything else happens to one of them, the others will have a good idea of what to do.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Thornton. That would be the best solution, but I'm sure they'll announce their plans later.
Right. So now that update is out of the way, let's see what other progress you've made.
Okay, so the latest from the project is that one of the people taking part, Joe, attacked another person on the team, Martin, and hit him. I really can't believe that Joe would do something like that. He's been the quietest up until now.
Sometimes that's what happens. You think someone is okay, but it turns out that they're not. Why did he do it? Is it anything to do with personality problems, or is it just a disagreement about something?
Well, there are strong signs that there have been some emotional or psychological problems which result from being isolated for so long.
Isolation? What, so you're saying that Joe might be suffering some kind of psychological problems? I can see how that can happen in an environment like that, where there's no escape from the situation.
Well, as a psychology tutor, I find that really interesting. Many types of people participate in projects studying the effects of isolation. We all know that one of the main issues with a project like this is how people will get on when they are locked away together for such a long time. It can produce all kinds of psychological and emotional problems. That's what I'm particularly interested in, and one of the reasons why I wanted you to do this particular project.
Me too. That'll be one of the most important things to come out of this project. How people can control their emotions and feelings over a long time when they can't get away from each other.
True, but we have to remember that this is a science project and not some soap opera or television series with lots of silly people locked up in a big house or something.
I can see what both of you are saying, but there are always going to be problems like these, so it's not surprising when they happen. In fact, this is the first time someone has got really angry in the first 3 months, so I think that's quite a positive thing.
So what do you think will happen? Will they make him leave?
I don't think they can. It's all part of the programme. And anyway, as the environmental engineer, Joe is an essential member of the team. If he left, then the whole environment of the building would go wrong. So I think they'll just have to work the situation out. Remember last month, when the ventilation system broke down? They almost lost all their fresh air. He only had a couple of hours to fix it, and he managed to do it.
I'm sure they'll work it out. So, what else have you found out?
The next bus should be here soon.
No, it won't. I just checked. It's due in 20 minutes.
20? I don't believe it. It should be every 10 minutes. Oh, this service is getting worse and worse.
You're right. It was never this bad. The bus company just doesn't care about passengers anymore, as long as they get the money.
Excuse me, could you tell me why the 4:50 train to London hasn't arrived yet?
I'm afraid there's been an accident on the line at the station before this one.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Do you have any idea when it might arrive?
Well, at the moment the line's closed, but I've just heard that the company is arranging buses to take passengers to London. There should be one here soon.
Thanks for letting me know.
What do you think? Should we take the car? It's the quickest way to get to Bristol. It's straight down the motorway. We should be there in 2 hours.
Haven't you heard? There's fog on the motorway, and there are massive jams all the way down. There's really no point in driving.
Oh, really? Well, shall we take the train? I know it's expensive, but maybe we can get a cheaper fare. I'll have a look at the train website.
Good idea. At least we can get there fairly quickly and safely.
OK, darling, I'm off to work.
You're not using the car, are you? Remember what the doctor said? You need to get more exercise and lose weight, especially now that your leg is better.
I know, but my leg hurts a bit today. I'd prefer to use the car.
Yes, but it won't get better if you sit in the car all day. I really think you should do some more exercise. And it's a lovely day for cycling. You can use the car when it rains.
OK, I'll cycle today, but I'll need to use the car tomorrow, as I've got a lot of things to take to work.
I'm thinking of buying a motorbike now that I've retired. I'll have a lot of time to ride around like I used to.
A bike? Are you sure? I really don't think that's a good idea. They're really dangerous.
Only if you don't know what you're doing. I used to ride one when I was younger.
How long ago was that? It must be at least 30 years ago. Have you been on one since?
No, but I'm sure I can remember how to ride one.
Well, if you ask me, I think you're making a big mistake. I wouldn't get back on a bike after so much time. But it's your decision.
So the main focus of the project is the transport system in the town. We need to look at the problem carefully and then discuss possible solutions. We have to decide which one we could recommend to a transport committee.
OK, Sophie. I think the problem is not a simple one, as there are various causes that we have to discuss. I think the first one is to do with the bus service in the town. In my view, the lack of buses has meant that too many people are using their cars. The service isn't reliable enough.
Yes, you have a point there. It would be good if we could have more buses on the road all the time, but I don't think that's the main reason for the heavy traffic. And the problem won't go away just by improving bus services.
You could be right. More buses would be useful, but that's not enough to put things right. We have to remember that many people come into town by rail, and the rail company has been talking about reducing staff and services because of financial problems. If that happens, then more people will use their cars to come in. We need to take that into consideration when deciding on a solution.
Of course. I think the town council can find some extra money to support the train service because, if anything, we want to increase the service, to reduce the traffic on the roads. The more people travel by rail, the less they'll use the road. And we would have the added benefit of safer roads, especially at school travel times.
True, but one good thing is that the road accident rate has been falling recently, partly due to the high volume of traffic on the roads. After all, when there's too much traffic, it moves more slowly, and fewer people, especially children, are in danger.
I realize that, but that's exactly what we have to deal with. The problem of too many vehicles coming in. I know children are safer, but the air quality is much worse. We don't want to have more medical problems like asthma and bronchitis, especially for children and older people.
True, and when I think about it, I can see that the heavy traffic means that businesses lose money, people are late for work, and drivers get more stressed. So let's think about how we can deal with that and look at the possible solutions.
So, where are the worst affected places in town?
I would say one of the worst is by the art centre.
I'm not sure about that. Statistics show that the worst place is by the town hall.
Well, as most of the traffic comes in from the east of town, that would be the art centre. The town hall is further over.
Actually, Robert, that's not quite right. The traffic gets quite bad along East Road, further out of town. It's been getting worse over the last year or so, especially by the Starview Cinema.
The Starview?
Yes. Haven't you ever been there?
No, I haven't. I thought it was by the main roundabout.
Well, in actual fact, it's by the junction of East Road and Station Road. That's where the traffic has been getting really bad, especially in the mornings. It's especially bad for the buses coming from the station, as they can't turn right into East Road to get to the centre.
OK, so that's the first bad spot then.
Yes. Sometimes the traffic backs up for almost a kilometre, and in the evening, when everyone is trying to get home, it gets bad all the way back to the main roundabout. It's bad in the morning and the afternoon, as the traffic also comes in from the north and the south. Remember, there's Liverton to the north and Scottsfield to the south, and a lot of people commute to both places for work.
That's true. I live a few kilometres down the Scottsfield Road, and I have a lot of trouble coming in during the morning rush hour. It's especially bad just by the art centre, where the road comes into the roundabout. The buses have a lot of trouble getting through that as well. OK, so those are the two main hotspots, the Starview and the art centre. I've marked them on the map, and that leaves the town hall.
Yes. I mean, the whole area around Central Park is bad, but you're right, the town hall side of Central Park is the worst in the area. It's bad enough right by the shopping centre on the other side of Central Park, but it's particularly bad on the town hall side, with all the heavy lorries coming into the centre from the industrial estate on the west side of town. They usually make their deliveries in the morning rush hour.
So you're saying that if we stop them coming in early to the area by Central Park where the town hall is, that would make the traffic a lot lighter?
I'm sure it would. Now that we've established where the worst places are, let's have a look at the proposals. The first proposal is to introduce bus and cycle lanes on the roads coming into each of the trouble spots, but I'm not really sure that that will solve the problem by itself.
What do you mean? I think it's a really good idea. I think it would help a lot.
On the face of it, yes, but in actual fact, it can make things worse. There have been a few studies of towns and cities where they've put schemes like that into operation, and one serious problem is that car traffic tends to go off into the areas around town where people live, and that causes more traffic in places where there haven't been problems before. Drivers think they can find emptier roads in residential areas, and it just sends the problem there instead.
I hadn't thought about that. What about the second one? A park and ride scheme?
Well, we build car parks on the edge of town where the main roads come in. When cars come into town from further out, they can park there cheaply and take special buses into the town center. It's been quite popular in a few other towns around the country.
In some places, yes, but not in all. I've had a look at some of those schemes. The main problem is lack of take-up. Drivers just don't use them. A lot of these car parks stay empty for a long time, and the buses are often less than half full. It's not always a good use of public money, especially when drivers avoid using the services and prefer to come into town and pay higher parking fees.
You've got a point there. We need to bear that in mind. Do you think either of the other proposals would work? I think the pedestrian area is a very interesting proposal. We could turn the whole of the center, including the shopping areas, into a pedestrian zone and put in a one-way system round it.
I'm not convinced that would work. You'd move all the traffic further out of the centre and cause more problems. But the biggest problem would actually be with the shops themselves. It's fine to stop traffic around the shopping areas, but there would be huge problems with deliveries. Some shops could go out of business if they have difficulty getting lorries in with their goods.
Right. I'll note that as well. The last one is a new tram system. We'll have to lay down a new line through the center of town, and also from north to south. It's quite a popular solution to traffic problems.
That may be so, but the main problem with that kind of project is the expense. The initial financial requirements would be huge, and so would the maintenance expenses. It might well be far more than the council is prepared to spend on a solution.
I'll note that as well, which brings us to the next point, the question of cost. I've got the details on the cost of each of these projects. The tram system comes out as the costliest. It would cost over £20 million just to prepare the route and to lay the lines down, including widening the roads. Then there's the cost of buying the trams themselves and organizing the system.
And what does it all come to?
No less than £30 million in the end. At least that's what they need to try to keep the cost down to.
£30 million? That does seem a lot. I thought it was closer to 25 million, but clearly it isn't. And what about the cheapest?
Well, it seems that it'd be either the bus and cycle lanes plan or the park and ride scheme. At the moment, it looks like the bus and cycle lanes might be the least expensive overall. The changes wouldn't be so large. They estimate around £8 million to set up the signs, paint the roads, and so on, and at least another £2 million or so to make other changes.
So you're saying it's around £10 million? That seems quite reasonable. What about the park and ride scheme?
Well, there are sites which have been identified for development to build the car parks, and as they're not in the centre, it won't cost too much to buy them, probably around £5 million. Then they just need to lay out the car parks and put in bus shelters, which should be around £6 or £7 million, and then get the buses. If they rent them, they could keep the cost down to around £3 million.
So, if I'm right, that comes to around £15 million for the park and ride in total. And then there's the pedestrian and one-way system. How does that work out?
That's the second highest. We'd have to reroute all the traffic while the works are done, then change the roads along the routes to make it safer for cyclists, which is around £12 million. Then there are the new signs and so on, which comes to about £5 million, and also the road painting and maintenance, at around £8 million.
So that's around £23 million. We might be able to manage that.
Actually, that's £25 million, Robert.
So it is. My mistake. Maths was never my strong point.
So we've discussed the negative aspects and costs of these proposals, but now I'd like to look at the real benefits which we think each proposal will bring.
Well, I really think that one of the most important benefits is better public transport. The most important thing is to get more people out of their cars and onto public transport.
Well, 3 of the proposals would help with that: park and ride, bus and cycle only routes, and the new tram system. Which do you think would be the best out of those 3?
I think the bus and cycle routes would be great for town centre transport. But they might push car traffic further out and make it more difficult for buses outside the centre. That leads me to think that the tram system would actually improve public transport the most, even though it's the most expensive, as there will be a new form of transport in the centre without affecting other parts of town.
I think you have a good point there. I agree that in the long term it would be the best thing. Do you think that proposal would also increase the amount of visitors in town?
Well, of course. Any of the solutions would do that, but I'm not sure if the tram system would be the best. What do you think?
I think the park and ride would be better than the tram system for that. The trams would help people who are already in town, but a park and ride would bring more of them in from outside.
So you think the park and ride would bring most visitors in?
Actually, I think if people know that they can get around the centre more easily, do their shopping and so on, they would come in more. So perhaps the pedestrian area and one-way system would be best in that respect.
True. I've seen other town centres become really busy when they've put in pedestrian areas, so that's clearly the best way of bringing visitors in. So we agree on that then.
And I think that people's health will improve as well, as they will be walking around the pedestrian area rather than driving around town.
Up to a point, yes, but I'm sure you'd agree that encouraging people to do more cycling would help their health far more.
Of course. Creating bus and cycle-only routes would be the best way of getting people to exercise. It would also help reduce pollution, so even the people who don't cycle will breathe cleaner air.
And we agree that producing less pollution is a really important part of this scheme, though I think that the park and ride would be better at doing that than the bus and cycle-only routes.
I'm not sure. Lots of people would need to use the park and ride to help reduce pollution. Bus and cycle-only routes keep cars out of the centre.
Yes, but if people are encouraged to use park and ride more, it would produce the best results. There would be far fewer cars in the centre, and the air would be much cleaner.
Yes, that's true, but that's a lot of work for the council. OK, we'll agree on a park and ride then. What about safety? I'd say the bus and cycle routes would be the best from that point of view.
Probably. I think I agree with you on that.
OK then, so we agree on safety.
Actually, no. When I think about it, you have to take pedestrians into account as well. It's safer for cyclists when there are no cars around, but I'm not sure that it's safer for pedestrians. They still have to avoid cyclists, who don't always pay attention to pedestrians. So I really think the pedestrian area and one-way system would be safer for them. Cyclists won't be allowed in the pedestrian areas, so there will only be people walking.
Yes, you have a point there. Shall we change that then?
OK, I'm glad you agree. So that's all done then. We have all our recommendations.
Have you got the results from the survey we did? About the changes that have been made to Ashtown in the last 25 years, Bill?
Yes, Jane, and there've been a lot of changes. Some of them people are happy about, and some of them they aren't.
What, for example?
Well, for example, the bus system used to be much better. And even though the old, uncomfortable buses have been replaced with new, stylish ones, fewer people use them.
Why is that?
A lot of people think it's because fares are higher, but that isn't true. In fact, the cost compared to average salaries is pretty much the same as 25 years ago. The fact is that the buses now just go to the most popular destinations, and as the city centre no longer allows vehicles, there are even fewer places where buses can go.
Most people must be happy with fewer cars in the town centre, though.
I'm not so sure. 5 years ago, a bypass was supposed to be built so that people could easily get from one side of the town to the other without going into the centre, but those plans still haven't happened. The biggest success, in my opinion, is the building of areas for cyclists. Far more people are travelling by bike and using the facilities than anybody could have imagined.
That's all very interesting, but how have the jobs that people do in the city changed? That's sure to have had an impact on what the town looks like.
You're not wrong there. The town used to be a lot more polluted due to all of the products that were made in factories here. Manufacturing is still important, of course, And services such as accountancy firms and website developers employ a lot of people in the town, but you only have to see the number of universities and colleges that have opened in the town in the last 25 years to see that as where most of the jobs are now.
OK, now shall we have a look at how some of the buildings have changed?
I think that, first of all, we should look at how the railway station has changed. As there are now fewer buses, more people drive to the railway station to take a train. 25 years ago, the car park was much smaller, and although it might not look very modern, most of the spaces have only been there for 5 years.
Oh, yes. Didn't the cinema used to be quite near the railway station? I suppose they built more spaces when they knocked it down.
That's right. The Grand Cinema used to be next to the railway station, but they rebuilt one exactly the same as the old one over in King Street.
What about the indoor market? My mum says there used to be an outdoor one, but that closed down a long time ago.
Yes, and when the outdoor market closed down, the indoor market became a lot more popular. 10 years ago, it looked like it would close down too, as the building was really old and it had become dangerous. It used to be owned by the council, but a private business bought it and made the changes so that it could stay open.
It's good to see it's so popular still, despite all the new supermarkets in town. I bet the library isn't as popular as it used to be, though.
You'd be surprised. A lot of people still use the library. Most people think that people are less keen on borrowing books than in the past, but the library has adapted to changes. It's true that fewer people go in there to borrow books, but since they made tablets and computers available, more people have started visiting it. It has really fast Wi-Fi too, so people like it because of that.
Quite a few of the factories have closed down or been sold in the last 25 years, though. So what happened to all the buildings that used to house them? I suppose they're all shut down now?
Some of them have been demolished and some have been converted for other uses, but that isn't surprising. The thing that I found surprising was that although education has become more important to the economy of the town, there isn't an art college anymore. In fact, the art college is now used as a doctor's surgery.
Oh, really? Anyway, I think we need to look at how we're going to present these findings to...
Now, I'm going to give you a topic, and I'd like you to talk about it for between 1 to 2 minutes. You have 1 minute to think about your answer. Here's a piece of paper and a pencil for you to make some notes if you wish. All right? Remember, you have 1 to 2 minutes for this, so don't worry if I stop you. I'll tell you when the time is up. Can you start speaking now, please?
I remember a trip I took last year, on the 12th of August, I believe. I boarded a plane to Paris, which was rather exciting as I'd never done that before. Since I come from China, it took a long time to arrive. But when I got there, the first thing I did was go to the Louvre Museum, you know, where the big triangle is by the entrance, and took some pictures. After that, I boarded a subway train to the Eiffel Tower to take more pictures. Because I was pretty hungry around that time, I went to a restaurant, although I had trouble ordering food because I don't speak any French. Once I had eaten, I then took a tour bus to the Champs-Élysées in order to do a bit of shopping, where I went on to buy as much as I could. I even bought a souvenir snow globe for my friend Julie, as she collects them. However, when I got back on the tour bus and started taking pictures, I dropped my camera over the side, watching it break on the ground. After everything was over, I took the flight back to China. It was a great experience, although next time, I think I should study some French before I go.
And it was a great experience. I think I'll always remember going to Tibet.
Do you generally enjoy visiting new places?
Yes, I would say I like to try new things, meet new people, so traveling is something that is very important to me.
And it was a great experience. I think Paris is one of the best places on earth for culture.
Would you like to visit Paris again?
Oh, definitely. Maybe in 10 years' time, I'd like to go back and see if anything had changed.
Is there anywhere else you'd like to visit one day?
Yes, I've always thought about going to Rome. I mean, I'm a big fan of the opera and love Italian food, so it's next on my list of destinations.
And it was a great experience. London was one of the most interesting places I've ever been to.
Is there anything you didn't like about your holiday?
Maybe the weather. London isn't exactly famous for being a hot, sunny place to visit, but I didn't think the weather would be quite so bad as it was.
Would you recommend London to a friend?
Yes, definitely. But they would have to bring an umbrella. Everything else was wonderful, though. I would definitely recommend it.